That cup of tea steeping on your counter right now. The one you make every single morning before anything else happens in your day. Before the emails, before the kids wake up, before the rush actually begins. The one you reach for specifically because it feels like the gentle, healthy choice compared to coffee or soda. Calming, natural, practically medicinal in how it gets marketed to you on every box in the aisle. You assumed that meant something simple. Leaves, hot water, maybe a few minutes of steeping while you get ready. That is what tea has been for thousands of years across dozens of different cultures spanning the entire globe. One of the oldest, simplest beverages ever consumed by human beings, older than coffee, older than most of what fills a modern grocery store. Here is what almost nobody standing in the tea aisle actually knows before they toss a box into their cart. Modern tea packaging changed dramatically over the last 2 decades, quietly, without most consumers ever noticing the shift happening around them. A huge percentage of tea bags sold today are not made from paper at all, despite what most people assume when they picture a tea bag in their head. Many are made from a woven mesh material, often nylon or PET plastic, specifically chosen because it lets brands sell that premium pyramid-shaped bag that looks better sitting on a shelf and photographs better for glossy marketing campaigns. When you pour boiling water directly onto plastic mesh and let it sit there steeping for 3 to 5 minutes, the exact way every box instructs you to prepare it. Published peer-reviewed research out of respected universities has found that a single plastic tea bag can release billions of microplastic and nanoplastic particles directly into your cup during that steeping process. Separately, and just as important, tea leaves themselves are remarkably efficient at absorbing whatever happens to be present in the soil they grow in, including pesticide residue and heavy metals like lead and cadmium, in some documented cases at levels far higher than the finished, washed vegetables sitting right next to the tea aisle in the produce section. Most boxes on the shelf tell you absolutely nothing about either of these two separate issues. We pulled the packaging, the publicly available testing data, and the actual material composition on 11 of the biggest tea brands sold across America, the ones sitting in nearly every kitchen cabinet in the country right now. We looked closely at what the bag itself is actually made of, where the leaves are sourced from, and what independent laboratories and consumer testing organizations have found when they have gone in and checked directly rather than simply trusting the marketing copy printed on the box. Some of what we found is completely standard for the category overall and genuinely not something worth panicking over. Some of it is worth knowing before you steep a bag every single morning for the next 20 years without ever giving it a second thought. We are counting down from the least concerning entry to the most concerning, and at the very end I will give you 5 brands and simple swaps that are actually worth trusting with your daily cup. Let's get into it. Lipton Black Tea, the classic yellow box sitting in nearly every American pantry for generations now. The tea most people's parents drank at the kitchen table. The tea that basically defined what tea even is for millions of households who never once gave the actual product a second thought beyond grabbing the familiar box off the shelf. Lipton's standard black tea bags are made from a paper and fiber blend rather than a woven plastic mesh, which genuinely puts this brand ahead of several premium competitors we'll get to further down this list, purely on the microplastic question specifically. Lipton is not doing anything unusual for the category here, and that paper-based format deserves real credit rather than being dismissed. But independent testing conducted by Consumer Reports and several other consumer advocacy organizations over the years has periodically found trace pesticide residues present in Lipton and other mass-market black teas, generally within legal limits set by regulators, but present nonetheless in measurable amounts. That finding is a useful reminder that even the most familiar, most basic tea sitting in your cabinet is still fundamentally an agricultural product grown at massive industrial scale across huge plantations, sprayed like most other commodity crops around the world, and not automatically exempt from the exact same residue questions that regularly get applied to produce sitting in the fruit and vegetable section. Number 10. Bigelow Tea, an American family-owned company that markets heavily around its domestic ownership and its long-standing history in this country. A brand that leans hard into feeling more wholesome and more trustworthy than the larger, more faceless corporate competitors sitting right next to it on the very same shelf. Bigelow uses standard paper tea bags across most of its core product line, which is again a genuine point in its favor worth acknowledging directly. However, Bigelow does not publish batch-level heavy metal or pesticide testing results publicly for consumers to actually review before purchasing. and several of its herbal and specialty blends source ingredients from multiple different countries blended together into a single product, which makes it genuinely difficult for any shopper standing there to know exactly which specific region a given box's leaves actually came from originally. The domestic, family-owned branding printed across the box and the actual global sourcing happening behind several of its specialty blends are two completely separate stories, and most people never think to separate those two things while standing there in the aisle deciding what to place in their cart. Number 9. Twinings Tea, a British brand carrying centuries of history behind it. Sold widely across American grocery stores specifically because of its perceived heritage and its slightly more premium positioning compared to the mass-market yellow and orange boxes sitting nearby on cheaper shelves. Twinings uses a mix of different packaging materials depending on the specific product line in question, with some of its standard bag teas made from traditional paper and some of its pyramid-shaped premium bags made instead from a plant-based bioplastic material rather than conventional petroleum-based plastic mesh. That bioplastic is marketed as compostable and represents a genuine step up from the petroleum-based plastic mesh used by some competitors further down this list. But independent researchers studying this specific material have noted that bioplastic tea bags still release measurable particles into hot water during steeping, just potentially at somewhat lower rates than conventional plastic mesh, an important nuance that rarely, if ever, makes it onto the actual box where a shopper would see it before buying. Number 8. Celestial Seasonings, the brand built entirely around whimsical, colorful box art and herbal blends marketed heavily toward wellness-conscious shoppers specifically looking for something that feels closer to medicine than a simple everyday beverage. Sleepy Time, Digestive Support Blends, Immune Support Blends, all positioned deliberately as functional health products rather than just an ordinary cup of tea. Celestial Seasonings sources a wide range of herbs and botanicals from multiple countries around the world, and herbal ingredients as a broader category have generally shown more variability in independent pesticide testing compared to standard black or green tea, largely because herbal blends simply are not held to the exact same widely studied commodity crop standards that something like black tea has already been subjected to for decades of regulatory oversight. The brand does not publish specific country of origin information for each individual herb inside its various blends, which means a shopper reaching specifically for a Sleepy Time blend because it feels natural, gentle, and safe has genuinely limited ability to verify where any single ingredient in that particular bag actually originated from. Number 7. Tazo Tea, a premium brand acquired and distributed through a major beverage conglomerate, sold heavily in coffee shops and grocery stores alike, with sleek, minimalist packaging specifically designed to feel more elevated and more thoughtfully sourced than a standard supermarket tea box sitting nearby. Tazo's premium positioning includes several pyramid-shaped tea bags across its product line, and pyramid bags across the entire tea industry are disproportionately more likely to be made from plastic mesh rather than paper, specifically because that particular pyramid shape requires a material with considerably more structural rigidity than a flat paper bag can realistically provide. Tazo does not clearly disclose the exact material composition of its pyramid bags anywhere on the box itself, leaving shoppers who specifically chose the premium option and paid a genuine premium price for that choice with meaningfully less transparency about bag material than some of the cheaper paper-bagged competitors sitting just one shelf down at a lower price. Number 6. Yogi Tea, a wellness-focused brand built almost entirely around Ayurvedic tradition and functional health messaging, sold heavily at natural grocery stores and specifically marketed toward health-conscious shoppers actively seeking herbal remedies rather than simply an everyday beverage to drink casually. Yogi Tea uses a mix of different bag materials across its broad product line and sources a wide range of herbs and spices internationally from various suppliers. Because herbal and spice ingredients have shown considerably more variability in independent heavy metal testing compared to standardized commodity teas, largely due to inconsistent regulation across herbal supply chains globally, and because Yogi markets its products specifically as therapeutic and health-supporting rather than simply pleasant tasting. The gap between the wellness promise printed on the box and the actual sourcing transparency standing behind that promise is genuinely worth noting for anyone drinking these specific blends for a perceived medicinal benefit rather than casual enjoyment. Number 5. Republic of Tea, a premium specialty brand sold at a significantly higher price point than mass-market competitors, marketed heavily around craftsmanship and overall quality with sophisticated, elegant packaging designed to feel considerably more artisanal than anything sitting in a standard grocery aisle nearby. Several of Republic of Tea's signature products use pyramid-shaped mesh bags as their standard format, and the brand's own marketing materials describe these bags using language like silken, a term that sounds genuinely elegant and luxurious but frequently refers to a woven nylon or PET plastic mesh material rather than any actual silk fiber whatsoever. Paying a real premium price specifically for a bag material description that sounds luxurious but is functionally the same plastic mesh material, raising microplastic exposure concerns in considerably cheaper competitors, is exactly the kind of gap between polished marketing language and underlying material reality that is genuinely easy to miss without reading the fine print closely. Number 4. Teavana. Formerly sold through a major coffee chain's retail store locations and now distributed through various other retail channels, built entirely around a premium, elevated tea drinking experience with elaborate pyramid sachets marketed consistently as a meaningful step above ordinary bagged tea sitting on cheaper shelves. Teavana's pyramid sachets are made from a plastic mesh material, which does get disclosed in some product documentation available if you look for it, but is not prominently featured anywhere on the front of the packaging where a shopper would actually see it before making a purchase decision. Independent studies specifically testing plastic pyramid tea bags under near boiling water conditions, the exact conditions these particular products are designed and instructed to be used in every single time, have found substantial microplastic release into the resulting beverage, which is precisely the scenario this brand's entire product format is built around every single time someone sips a cup at home. Number 3. David's Tea, a Canadian brand with significant United States distribution across many grocery and specialty stores, built entirely around an enormous, expansive catalog of specialty blends and vividly colorful, elaborate pyramid sachets that have become the brand's visual signature and the primary reason many people reach for it specifically over a plain paper-bagged competitor sitting nearby. The overwhelming majority of David's Tea's entire product line uses plastic mesh pyramid sachets as its default packaging format, meaning nearly every customer choosing this brand specifically for its extensive blend variety and colorful presentation is also, whether they realize it or not, simultaneously choosing the exact packaging format most closely associated with elevated microplastic release during the steeping process. The brand's marketing emphasizes ingredient quality and blend creativity extensively across its packaging and website, but says comparatively little about the bag material itself, the very thing sitting directly in the cup for several minutes every single time it gets used. Number 2. Numi Organic Tea, a brand that has built significant consumer trust specifically around its organic certification and its environmentally conscious positioning, marketed heavily toward shoppers who genuinely care about both personal health and broader environmental sustainability at the same time. Numi does use some biodegradable bag materials across parts of its product line, which is a genuine point in its favor from an environmental standpoint worth acknowledging clearly. However, organic certification specifically verifies that synthetic pesticides were not intentionally applied during the growing process. It does not verify the absence of heavy metals like lead or cadmium, which occur naturally in soil regardless of farming method and get absorbed directly by tea plants whether that particular farm is certified organic or grown conventionally. Several independent lead testing surveys of packaged tea conducted over the years have found organic certified teas testing at levels statistically similar to conventional teas specifically for heavy metal content, a distinction that the word organic printed on the box does absolutely nothing to communicate to a shopper who reasonably but incorrectly assumes that certification covers every possible concern. Number 1. Any loose leaf or bagged tea marketed heavily around exotic or genuinely hard to verify sourcing claims, frequently sold through smaller specialty retailers or online marketplaces with elaborate stories about rare mountain regions, ancient harvesting traditions, or centuries-old family farms, but with little to no independent testing data, clear country of origin labeling, or verifiable supply chain documentation actually standing behind the marketing copy printed on the package. This is really more of a broad pattern than any single named brand. The category of tea products where the story sold to you through packaging and website copy is elaborate, evocative, and genuinely compelling, but the actual verification standing behind that story is thin to completely non-existent once you start looking for it. Independent testing of imported specialty teas purchased through smaller retailers and online marketplaces has, across various surveys conducted over the years, found some of the widest variability in both pesticide residue and heavy metal content across the entire tea category as a whole, precisely because these smaller, less established supply chains often lack the scale and the regulatory scrutiny that larger, more established national brands are routinely subject to. The more elaborate and evocative the sourcing story printed on the label happens to be, the more it's genuinely worth pausing to ask whether there is any actual testing data standing quietly behind all of it. That is the full list. 11 entries, one repeating pattern running underneath nearly every single one of them from top to bottom. Plastic mesh pyramid bags marketed with elegant, sophisticated language that quietly obscures what the material actually is at a chemical level. Herbal and specialty blends sourced from multiple countries at once, with genuinely limited transparency about which specific region any single ingredient actually came from originally, and organic or wellness branding that shoppers reasonably but mistakenly assume automatically covers heavy metal content, when in reality that particular certification was never designed to address that specific concern in the first place. Before we get to what is actually worth buying instead, here is something you can genuinely go check tonight with the box already sitting in your own kitchen cabinet. No lab equipment or special certification required at all. Start with the material test. Look closely and carefully at the actual tea bag itself, not just the outer box it came packaged inside. Traditional paper bags are matte in appearance, slightly textured to the touch, and they tear apart like ordinary paper when you pull on them gently. Pyramid-shaped bags that have a smooth, silky, slightly stretchy feel when you handle them are very likely a woven plastic mesh material, regardless of what elegant, sophisticated language the outer box uses to describe that exact material. If you genuinely cannot tell just from touch alone, check the brand's official website or the fine print printed somewhere on the box for specific words like nylon, PET, or plant-based bioplastic, and treat a complete absence of any material disclosure at all as itself a meaningful data point worth noting. Then run the steep test yourself at home. If you specifically want to reduce microplastic exposure without necessarily switching brands entirely, cut open a plastic mesh bag carefully and steep the loose leaves directly in a metal infuser, or transfer the leaves into a reusable infuser you already own rather than steeping the sealed bag itself in your cup. Published research specifically points to the bag material sitting in near boiling water as the actual source of particle release, not the tea leaves themselves, which means the simplest, most immediate fix often has nothing to do with which specific brand you buy going forward, and everything to do with what you actually do with the bag once you already own it. Finally, run the sourcing test. Look for a specific country or region of origin printed clearly somewhere on the box, not just a vague blended statement covering multiple regions at once. Brands willing to clearly disclose exactly where their leaves were actually grown generally have more genuine confidence in their own supply chain, and are considerably more likely to have actually tested that supply chain at some point, while brands that stay deliberately vague about origin are simply harder to evaluate fairly either way, regardless of how the rest of the packaging looks. Now, 5 brands and simple habits that are actually worth trusting with your everyday cup. The first good pick is any traditional paper bag black or green tea from an established, reputable brand that clearly discloses paper as the bag material, specifically avoiding the pyramid format entirely regardless of how premium or elegant it happens to look sitting on the shelf. This single choice alone eliminates the plastic mesh microplastic concern almost completely, and it typically costs meaningfully less than the pyramid alternative sitting right next to it on the same shelf, not more, which makes it one of the easiest and cheapest genuine swaps on this entire list to make starting tomorrow morning. The second good pick is loose leaf tea steeped in a reusable stainless steel infuser, purchased from any brand that clearly discloses its country and specific region of origin right there on the packaging itself. This particular approach eliminates the bag material question entirely, since there is no bag at all involved in the process, and it lets you visually inspect the actual leaves yourself before you even buy the product, something no sealed bagged product anywhere in the store actually allows you to do while standing there deciding. The third good pick is Traditional Medicinals, a brand that has built its entire reputation specifically around herbal tea with a strong, consistent public emphasis on testing, sourcing transparency, and clearly disclosed paper-based bag materials across its core product line. The brand publishes considerably more detail about its quality testing process than many competitors covered on this list, which is exactly the kind of genuine transparency worth actively rewarding with your regular purchase going forward. The fourth good pick is any tea specifically labeled as grown in Japan, particularly for green tea varieties specifically, since Japanese green tea production has generally been subject to some of the strictest agricultural residue testing standards found anywhere in the world, and several independent surveys conducted over the years have found Japanese-sourced green tea testing consistently favorably compared to green tea sourced from other regions with meaningfully less rigorous regulatory oversight in place. The fifth good pick, and honestly the single most reliable option on this entire list, is simply making tea from loose leaves you have inspected yourself directly, sourced from a company willing to tell you exactly which farm or region they actually came from, brewed in a metal infuser you already own sitting in a kitchen drawer, steeped for exactly the time that specific tea actually calls for, rather than however long the bag happens to sit forgotten in your mug while you get distracted by something else. It costs meaningfully less per cup than nearly every premium pyramid bag covered on this entire list, and you will know with genuine certainty exactly what is sitting in that cup with you every single morning before you take the first sip. Here is the one rule genuinely worth keeping the very next time you find yourself standing in the tea aisle deciding what to place in your cart. Check the bag material before you check the flavor printed on the front. Look specifically for paper, or better yet, look for no bag at all and consider going loose leaf instead. A brand that is genuinely confident in what it is actually selling generally has no real reason to hide what the bag itself is actually made of. And the ones that stay vague about it are telling you something too, even without saying a single word directly. If this changed the way you think about something as simple and routine as your morning cup of tea, hit the like button right now before you scroll away to something else, and tell me down in the comments which specific brand was sitting in your cabinet before you started watching this video today. Subscribe to the Hidden Receipt so that you catch it every single time we open up another everyday habit that nobody else out there is actually bothering to look at closely enough. Stay sharp, check the bag before you ever trust the box, and I will see you in the next one.